Hi, and welcome to this quick tool review. In this tool review, I'll be reviewing the Millart 12-inch sheet metal plate cutting bench shear, hand shear. And I chose the 12-inch model as opposed to the 6, 8, and 10-inch models that are out there because, one, the price difference is small, the form factor is very similar, they're not a lot smaller to get the smaller length, and so I was looking for something compact but still large enough to do reasonable size pieces of sheet stock for the small projects I have, and I couldn't afford or have the space for a regular shear, so there's no room in my garage to get, like, say, the Harbor Freight 30-inch shear, and I certainly can't afford a real shear that would be many thousands of dollars. So I opted to try this one out. I got it locally, so I got it very quickly. This one came from, let me see, where is that on here? Here, Cerritos, which is not very far away, like 40 or 50 miles away. And they took one day to ship it, and then UPS picked it up the next day, and I had it the day after. So you would think that would mean light handling, right? Let's go take a look. So the item weighs 57 pounds, the tool does. I started to cut it open and realized, maybe I should cover this. So the manufacturer and or the shipper did a nice job. They really did try and protect it. They put plastic on the outside with lots and lots of tape to keep water out if there was a problem, although I live in Southern California, so water's not usually a problem. But double thick cardboard box that it's in with wood reinforcement, and there's foam on both sides. But still, I've cut this open, but it was partially blown open when I got it. There was tears along here, and I just cut the rest of the way. But even with the foam protection, the thing is just all a jumble in there. UPS, for having it overnight, really did a number on it. Provided it didn't happen in the the seller's facility or shipping from the manufacturer, but I kind of doubt that. In any case, let's get this guy out of here and take a look at it. So here is how it arrived, and I did clean off some light oil on the blade, but that was about it. I expected to have the shipping schmoo that takes, half hour to get off with kerosene, but luckily it's light oil only. No rust though, nice condition. One other thing I did notice, let me flip this guy around. First thing I noticed was that the handle wasn't attached. That was not surprising. I thought it would come in two parts, but it's actually one beefy handle that's going to bolt on. A lot of the other machines, the handles are two parts, so that's a nice plus. The pre-tensioning adjustment for the joint where basically keeps how hard it keeps the blade against the side here and how much blade engagement here was completely loose, and maybe that's intentional, although their manual has no reference to adjusting that at all. It does have a blow up of the parts. It's very, very simple. Let me just pop this out here. It has a blow up diagram and all the parts in the device, and then basically talks about capacities. So this guy, the 12-inch one, will cut 1/4-inch plate up to 2 3/4 inches wide, or it will shear a 1/2-inch bolt in this guy here up to 1/2-inch material, round stock, and it'll do 12 inches of indeterminate thickness here, wide stock, which is the main reason I got it. So let me put this guy together, see if I can get this tension right. That may require some playing, we'll see. Maybe they left this loose intentionally, or maybe it was not. I don't know, we'll find out. I also noticed that the joint where this thing rotates on is paint on paint. So hopefully there's a little space in there I haven't got a good chance to look at. I'll bring you right back. So here's some interesting bits I discovered. First, these two bolts are made by different manufacturers, and they're two different sizes, 19 and 20 millimeters, or I'm sorry, 18 and 19 millimeters, which I thought was very funny. And obviously, when they bought their bolts, they didn't maintain consistency. Second, this bolt actually adjusts the blade only halfway. It is the front lever point for this whole assembly, and the other blade tightening point is this big bolt in back. What I did notice was that, as I suspected, this was loose for a reason, And the reason was because in here they painted everything, and the first time I got this even a little snug and ran this through its paces, it sheared off the paint inside with the primer. Nice to know they did primer it, because there's primer under the paint. But in any case, yeah, that's why they left it alone, so that you wouldn't have that problem. So then I went and tightened it, following it up, and you'll notice now there's no paint on it anymore. So they probably should have skipped that. I don't know. Maybe they thought it would look better like that. Anyways, I set the tension, and I added some lube to it, and it looks like it's still taking some paint off here, but this will get settled out soon enough. So let's turn this guy around and see how it works trying to cut some thin stock. So before I move on to the cutting, I wanted to point out some other features here. This bit here that looks sort of strange, its job is to hold down plate stock so that it doesn't bend around the edge if you're doing really thin stock with it. You can flip it up out of the way, so it's not a problem, but yeah, it's there to protect that. Some of the versions that they sold of the 12-inch size here had only 2 bolts on this bottom plate, and I thought, even though there's a relief on the back where this sits in, I thought having 4 bolts was a better choice, so that's why I chose this particular model. All the ones I was looking at, Bailey and Kaka, made in India, they're all made overseas. So I thought I was sort of in the same category. The price variation was extreme. I think it should work okay, but we're going to give it a shot. Anyways, those are just some more thoughts I had before we give this guy a test. So for my first go here, I was going to give it the paper test. And the reason for paper is to see how well the blades actually meet. So it cuts paper fine here, and cuts paper fine here until you get to the very end. And what that's showing is that the blade gap is not perfectly consistent along its length. So where that's not going to be a problem for, you know, thicker pieces of metal, it's interesting to note that back here the blades are separated enough that paper can fit in between. Up front, however, they're fine. And maybe they designed this, I can't really see here, with a slight curve in the blades so that it's sprung. They do that with some scissors so that it meets along the whole length. I don't know if this one's done like that. I'd have to take this blade off and see how flat it is. But in any case, it cuts paper for most of its length, just not the back where the joints meet. And it's actually a pretty smooth action. So for the next test, I was going to cut some brass plate here, which should be fairly easy for it. The only issue I'm going to have is that I don't have this attached, and I may have to put more force on the front than will keep this guy stable, and the back might want to lift up on me. So we'll have to give that a try and see. There's 50 thousandths and 62.5 thousandths. Let's give those a shot. So here's 50 thousandths stock. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to keep this guy down, but let's try it. Actually, pretty reasonable. The cut is smooth, front and back. Now I know that brass is not a huge chest for this guy, so let's see if we can find something else. So here's a piece of 30 thousandths galvanized. Hopefully I can hold the back of this down enough. Wow, actually that went like butter. That was easier than the 50 thousandths brass. That was a piece of cake. No problem. A little bit of curling in the back, which makes sense since the way you're cutting. You're compressing material on one side, so that is going to make it want to flex. So the piece of stainless sheet I've got is wider than the whole tool. It's 50 thousandths, so I'm wondering if I can do it in 2 passes. I don't think so without supporting the rear, but I'm going to give it a shot anyways. Let's go. Made it halfway, and it actually started off really easy. It's just when the mechanical advantage was working against me, it became a little more challenging. So this is cutting off the back side. So that was 50,000 stainless, and it wasn't hard pulling on the lever, it was hard keeping the rear end down. You really need to bolt this guy down to something, and I have an idea I'm going to try out, but it actually did a really nice job. So here was my solution to dealing with cutting heavier materials on this guy without being able to bolt it down at this point in time. What I did was I put a spacer under the front and a spacer under the back that sticks out, and I discovered that this bottom plate, they're just welded on and not even square. If you look at the angle of this relative to the top, it's skewed. But then my intention is, here's my lathe, which weighs 3,300 pounds, and all I do is stack some spacers, slide it right under. Now I can cut heavier items, and I don't think this will be a problem for my lathe, because I don't think the force will be that extreme, maybe in the hundreds of pounds. So I don't think that'll mess up my leveling, but I will double check that in the future. In any case, here is a piece of the 3/16 stainless. Let me just stick it through there, and I didn't get it quite too far enough. Let's go. 3/16 stainless 1/4" rod, and no problem, cuts right through it. There it is. Here's some 1/8" aluminum. That was trivial. Here's some 200 thousandths thick aluminum. That was no problem. A little bit of flexion. Here's some 1/8" steel. No problem at all. Nice cut. Here's some 3/8" round rod. It's close to the limit. Not really a problem. I think I do 1/2" without any problem at all. Now, they did mention one thing which I thought was kind of funny. They mentioned that this handle may not be long enough if you're going to try and cut the 1/4" plate. I'm pretty sure I'm never going to try and cut 1/4" plate, even a 2" length of it, because that seems a bit extreme. So I'm going to be using this almost exclusively for sheet stock. So I probably will be able to clamp it to one of my benches or find another mount point. But in the meantime, this gives me the ability to do pretty much anything with this guy. And those are my thoughts. I hope you like this review. Just to summarize one more time, different sized bolts to hold the handles on. They didn't pre-tighten this adjustment point because they didn't want to damage the paint, I'm guessing. The blade spacing in the rear may be controllable by this adjustment, actually, so I may be able to cut paper even in the rear by making it tighter, but I think I'm going to leave it where it is because it shears the plate stock just fine. It has 4 bolts instead of 2 like some of the models, and overall I'm pretty happy with it. The price was right. It was 180 some bucks, not terribly expensive on the scale of machine tools. Overall I'm happy with it. The build quality is okay, but functional, and the really important part is the jaws, and they seem to be fine. So one more thing that I noticed that I should probably mention is a lot of these shears have a pins point on them on the front so that they can be locked with the blade fully engaged, the blade's fully engaged, to make it safe in case someone comes over, you know, a kid comes over. But I don't know how useful that is in my shop. No kids around, and that's really not a terrible concern. Also, that makes the handle stick out horizontally. The other ones, the cheaper ones, have round handles, and you'd have to be able to remove the handle to do this, because it'd be a problem to be sticking out in the aisleway or wherever it is you've got it mounted. So I actually am happy with it this way. Just thought I'd mention that might be useful. Hope it was useful. Hope this review was useful. Thanks for watching. I hope to see you next time.